July 1988. It's a winter night in Christchurch, New Zealand. A young couple has just finished celebrating a family milestone, the 100th day since the birth of their son. Laughter has faded. The guests have gone home. Only the woman, her husband, her sister, and one sleeping friend remain inside a modest suburban house. But behind the closed doors of this home, their marriage isn't what it seems. In the early hours of the morning, the husband, drunk, volatile, and furious, picks up the phone. On the other end of the line, his wife's sister in Hong Kong. What starts as a call turns into blackmail. He demands hundreds of thousands of dollars. He threatens to kill his wife, her sister, and their family if she doesn't comply. He's made threats before, but this time, it feels real. Hours later, he'll be found dead. Not in the street, not during a fight, but in his own bed, tied up and stabbed as he slept. The night began like a quiet family celebration. But inside this house, something darker was already brewing. He had been drinking heavily, whiskey, mostly. By the early hours, his words were slurred, but his threats were clear. Shortly after 1 a.m., his rage turned outward. For more than an hour, he held her sister on the line from Hong Kong, demanding money, making threats. He told her the family's lives were in his hand. He threatened to kill his wife, her sister in Christchurch, and even relatives overseas. This wasn't just drunken talk, it was something she had learned to fear. When the call finally ended, he stumbled to their bedroom, still drunk, still threatening. He passed out in the bed they shared, and for the next 30 to 40 minutes, she thought. She thought about his words, about her sister, about what might happen if he woke up. She wouldn't call the police. She wouldn't wake her sister. She wouldn't leave the house. She made a decision. She tied him down with bathrobe cords while he slept. She stabbed him several times in the stomach, and then she placed a pillow over his face. He bled to death in minutes. Later, she would tell a friend, "I'm free." But freedom has a price. And this case wouldn't be about what happened that night, but about what the law says a person can do when they believe their life, or the lives of their family, are in danger. This is the story of R.V. Wang, one of New Zealand's most unsettling legal battles over what it really means to act in self-defense. The case of Xiao Jing Wang didn't just ask what she did that night. It asked what the law allows a person to do when they believe danger is coming, but hasn't arrived yet. She was charged with murder. But at trial, the jury found her guilty of manslaughter, accepting she'd acted under provocation, but not in self-defense. The trial judge made a critical decision. He refused to let self-defense even go to the jury. Under Section 48 of New Zealand's Crimes Act, a person is justified in using force in the defense of themselves or another if, in the circumstances as they believe them to be, that force is reasonable. Her lawyers argued that her belief was real, that after years of control and threats, and hours of listening to blackmail, she genuinely thought she and her sister were going to die. But the judge said it didn't matter how much she feared him. There was no imminent danger. On appeal, her lawyers argued the trial judge had made a critical mistake, that it wasn't for him to decide whether self-defense was justified. It was for the jury to decide whether there was even a reasonable possibility of it. They pointed to her state of mind, years of control, threats, and fear. The psychiatrist who testified said she truly believed her husband's threats, that in that moment she felt she had no choice. And under Section 48, it's her belief that matters, right? But the judges saw it differently. They ruled that even if she believed the threats were real, the threat itself wasn't immediate. He was unarmed, he was asleep, and she was free to leave. In their view, no reasonable jury could conclude it was necessary to kill him in self-defense. So where does that leave us? The law made a hard line. No immediate danger, no self-defense. But real life isn't always a single moment. Sometimes danger is a pattern. The standard of imminence works neatly for one-off confrontations, the kind you might picture outside a bar, a sudden blow, a split-second decision. But in some homes, threat doesn't arrive as a single strike. It arrives as routine. A look, a phone call, a debt, a promise that next time will be worse. When you judge only the final night, you can miss the meaning of every night that came before it. What sounds like, "Why didn't she leave?" can ignore how leaving has already been tried or punished or made impossible. In court, the availability of other options mattered. The logic is simple. If there are safer alternatives, use them. But there's a deeper question. Were those alternatives truly available to her as she understood her situation at that moment? If the law asks us to see the world as the accused believed it to be, does that also include how trapped she believed she was? The statute asks two things. First, look at the circumstances as the person believed them to be. Second, decide whether the force used was reasonable in those circumstances. Critics say the first question sometimes gets quietly replaced by an outsider's view of what options should have existed, not what options she believed she had. None of this excuses killing. It asks a harder question. When danger is a pattern, rather than a moment, how should the law measure necessity? Does insisting on a visible, immediate attack protect justice, or overlook how control and fear operate over time? In this case, the answer was clear. The jury never heard self-defense. The appeal confirmed that choice. But if you place yourself inside her world, the threats, the isolation, the belief that next was inevitable, do you reach the same conclusion? Tell me in the comments. Should imminence be the line, or should a pattern of danger count? When judging other options, whose perspective should decide what was truly available? In her circumstances, was the force used ever capable of being reasonable, or was this always manslaughter at best?